In this video, we're going to build the trip search process. So to look for trips, we need to input the departure and destination and then click on the search button. So once we click on that button, we want to show the trips right there. So we're going to be looking for trips going from any location within a 10 miles radius from our departure to any location within a 10 miles radius from our destination. So instead of sending the departure and destination only, we're going to need to send also the coordinates of the departure and the coordinates of the destination to the PHP file. So this is going to be very similar to what we did in the trips page. So when we were creating a trip, we had to give the departure and destination, but when we were sending the AJAX call, we also sent the coordinates of each of these two locations. So we're going to follow more or less the same process, and we're just going to reutilize some of the code that we've already written to save time. Okay, so we're going to go to the JavaScript file linked to this page, which is javascript.js. And then we're going to write code that we are going to execute when we submit the search form. So first, let's select the form using its ID. So here is our search form, and the ID is search form. So once we submit the form, we want to execute this function. So it's going to have a parameter event that we're going to use to prevent the default submission of the form. So we've done this many times now, so you must be familiar with this. Then we're going to collect all the user inputs and place them inside a variable that I'm going to call data. Okay, so let's see if we've already defined this variable. Okay, or let's just create a variable data to post like we did there and use the serialize array function. Okay, so now we've got the user inputs. All right, now let's just print the variable data post in the console just to make sure that everything works. So let's have a look at the console, and we can see an array there, and we've got our departure and our destination. All right, so now we want to add to these elements the coordinates of the departure and destination. So what we did in the JavaScript file linked to the trips page, when we were creating a trip, to get the coordinates, we used a function get our trip departure coordinates. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna call this, instead of add trip, we're gonna call this search, get search departure coordinates. Then we're going to define that function. And we're going to name it get search departure coordinates. Okay, so the IDs of the departure and destination are the same. Okay, so we're going to leave that as departure. And then once we've got the coordinates of the departure, we need the coordinates of the destination. But before going ahead, we need to define the geocoder. So let's copy this. Right there. And now let's change the name of this function to get search destination coordinates. Okay, now we're going to define that function. So you can just copy the code straight from here. And change the name. And we're going to change the submit function to submit search request. And also we're going to define that function same way we did right there. And then we're going to change it. All right, so the Ajax call is going to be sent to the search file. Okay. And we can see here the name of the data we're going to be sending is data. So we're going to be using data variable instead of data to post. So let's call this data and just define it right before the form. Okay, because it's data everywhere. Then once we've got the return data, we're going to write some code there. Okay, it's going to be different from this. And if there is an error with the Ajax call, we're just going to show an error message. So if we go to the index.php file, we want to show the results there, and also we'll show the errors there if there are any errors. So we're going to need to add a div right after the map. Or right after the sign up code, sign up button. So let's give it an ID, search results. So let's use that ID to show the error message. Okay, so let's save. All right, so for now, let's just make sure that we get the right data. So instead of sending the Ajax call, I'm just going to comment this for now. And then I'm just going to print in the console the data variable. So let's save and refresh. So you can see there the departure, destination, the departure longitude, latitude, and the destination longitude and latitude. So you've got all the data we want to send to the PHP file. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to send all this data to the PHP file, then we're going to go through all the checks, and then we're going to run a query which will find the right trips for us. Okay, so now let's and comment the Ajax call. Let's save this. We're going to come back to this function later. So inside the search file, we're going to start by starting a session and then connecting to the database. And then we're going to define all the possible error messages before checking the inputs. So we can get inspired from previous PHP files we created. So I'm going to open the add trips PHP file. So basically, the difference with this one is that we only have 2 inputs here, and we're going to have error messages corresponding to a missing departure, missing destination, invalid departure, and invalid destination. So let's copy the code for the session start and connection. Now, regarding the error messages, we want missing departure, invalid departure, missing destination, and invalid destination. Okay. Now let's check the departure and destination. Or before doing that, let's get the inputs. It's exactly the same code. And then now let's check the departure. So you can see that we're checking if the departure is empty, and then if the departure is there, we check the coordinates. And then we do the same thing for the destination. Okay. All right, now if we have any errors, we're just going to echo an error message and just exit the code. So we can just do the same thing we've done there. But this time, we will just exit the code right here, okay, if we've got an error. All right, so if we manage to get here, that means that we've got no errors, we've got our departure, our destination, and we've got our coordinates. So now the next step is to look for the relevant trips in the trips table. So to do that, we're going to need to do some geometry, because we want to find trips going from near Bedford to near London, and we've got a tolerance here of a 10 miles radius. So if we look inside our table, we've got the coordinates of each trip, the departure and the destination. So we're going to need to find a way to write a clever query which will look for all trips going from near Bedford to near London. So in the next video, we're going to do some geometry and then write the right query.